fight this feeling. It gets me every time. I am staring at the ceiling to get you off my mind.
Welcome to the Thought Brothers. I'm Gary Johnson, aka Mr. Producer. We've got a special guest tonight. We've got Kameron Corvet. Hopefully I didn't jack that up, Cam. Hopefully I didn't jack it up, man. But I knew about Kameron, but didn't really know about him until I started reading. But I was really familiar with his work, but didn't really tie it to him. And so, Kameron, you're a Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter, man. And this song that I had you connected with was Don't Make Me Wait. First of all, welcome to the show. Tell us about yourself, and then tell me a little bit about that single and how you and stuff, some of the stuff that you've been into.
OK. Kameron Corvet. Je suis né à Baton Rouge, en Louisiane, et je parle français. Alors, ça, c'est la raison pourquoi c'est
Right.
Corvet et not Corvette. So I was born in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, and moved from there to my mom's hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio. Come from a very musical family. I'm a fourth generation musician and singer and songwriter, I would say. Also grew up as an athlete and always had music, French, and sports to be connected to throughout my education. It's just sports was at the forefront early on. Music was just a part of it. I was singing classical music. I was singing church, and I just really loved it, but didn't know how to pursue it. Graduated from high school, went to school, and I went to school at Louisville for my first 2 years. Ran track there for my first year, and then I transferred to Morehouse in Atlanta in order to be closer to a musical scene that I felt like would help me grow and help me learn the business and still get my education. So that's where I ended up being and learning a lot about the music industry. I started to perform heavily. I started to record and learn about being an independent artist and what that entailed. And then I stumbled upon songwriting as a pursuit of its own by hearing songs I had written for myself. They asked me if I ever thought about it, and I decided to throw my hat in the game and purely focus on songwriting for a few years. Still doing shows as they were presented to me, but focusing on the songwriting as a craft in and of itself, and getting songs with artists. One of my first placements was with Angie Stone, rest in power. Also written for Case and written for Freddie Jackson, who was someone I remember listening to, in the backseat of the car every now and again. So
You are my lady. Yeah.
yeah. So that was kind of the joy of it for me at first. It wasn't about making money or anything like that, because I was moonlighting as a French teacher as well. So got my BA in French from Morehouse, and have taught French to Black and brown students my entire career as a French teacher prior to pursuing music full time. But I went through a phase where after a certain amount of years of teaching, I decided to just step out on faith and you know, did whatever I could to pay the bills, and had this record that I had written, and one of my Morehouse brothers collaborated on it a little bit. And in the music industry, virtually, ideas change hands a lot, especially with, the internet. So, a song can start as a little nugget of an idea, travel to one person, get added to, travel to another person, get added to. And that's what happened with this record. Ends up in the hands of Shaggy. Shaggy ended up being in the studio working on another unrelated project, but the guy he was working on it with was Sting's manager. So in a little split second, of listening to some other ideas that Shaggy just happened to have on his hard drive, they hear this song that I created. And he felt like Sting would be great on the song. He sent it to Sting. Sting loved the song, and it was just a song for about a year and some change. And then all of a sudden they decided to create an album around this particular song. So I had the fortune of being able to see a song be nothing but a chorus and some guitar chords to a full song to a full album, that ended up, winning the best reggae album Grammy in 2019. So that has been a benchmark for me, the whole process. But at the same time, even after writing for Toni Braxton and opening for artists like Chaka Khan and Robert Glasper and Erykah Badu and Adele, it's still incumbent upon me to pursue the vision and purpose that was given to me by the creator, which is to let my voice and my lyrics shine through me. So that is where I am at in my career. I have been fortunate enough to be able to be a working musician and do a lot of shows and performances. And it just occurred to me like, hey, I want to do this next body of work and really put some emphasis behind it. And the song I Will is the current single that I have out. It's been very well received, and I'm just super excited that it's been received like it has been. It's currently number 29 in the country right now on the Urban Adult Contemporary radio charts, and we've just been added to 16 stations yesterday, so for about total of around 40 stations in the country. FM, a few AM as well. It's also on Sirius XM Heart and Soul and on Music Choice as well. So for someone who's completely independent but entrepreneurially spirited and minded, I'm already, grateful that it's been able to afford me opportunities like speaking with you gentlemen today about my journey.
Man, you embody everything that blackmeninamerica.com stands for. You got it going on, man. The grind, the passion. I mean, I can't say enough, man. I can't wait to get this on the homepage. I can't wait. Oh my goodness. Carlos, I'm handing that baton over to you, brother.
Hey, Cameron, welcome to the Thought Brothers. We appreciate you, man, for coming and joining us. And man, very interesting career. And got to start out with that key question. Come on, man. Did you just wake up one day and want to do music? What's your motivation? Or did the man on the wall in the white suit, leaning back with the gangster lean, Michael Jackson himself, motivate you to want to get on stage? And then I see, is that Jimi Hendrix to the other side right there with the get? Come on, man. What's the motivation to do what you do?
Yeah, I think the feeling that I get when I am performing is as close to the creator as I have ever been. That feeling, whether I'm listening to a choir in a church and it's something that touches me, or whether I'm making the music, there's a feeling that comes, and I've always felt it. Classical music, there's a feeling, it's a feeling in music that does something to the spirit and can help uplift, and it can help you make sense of things. It can help you, get through situations. So I think as a consumer and as someone who was touched by music, it was something that I was always interested in. I didn't even know that I came from a musical family at first because I grew up outside of where my extended relatives were. But I always loved music and the arts in general. So music was the thing that just allowed me to really express myself the most. And then, realizing that I had a musical ear really made me more motivated. You try different things when you're growing up. You may try this sport or that sport or this instrument or that vocation. And music was the thing that when I did it, people's eyes, lit up. I got the reaction. So it fed me, in terms of my confidence in who I was and everything like that. So I dove into it more because not only was I good at it, but it was something that I really enjoyed. And I think that part of growing up is something that's super important. Like when you enjoy something and you're good at it too, like it's something to lean into. I did a lot of things growing up, but the motivation for me has always been about having a strong sense of self, believing that I am someone. You know, my father integrated a high school in Savannah, so I grew up with that as a paternal backdrop to everything that I experienced. Someone who, you know, could recount situations of being, you know, made to feel less than growing up. So he always was, you know, I went to private school growing up. We did after school stuff. You know, he was always pouring into us so that we would feel a strong sense of self being young Black men. And I think that those things, I felt that familiar feeling in certain things throughout my life, and you know, music has just always been that thing. So being able to have that freedom of expression and seeing how it makes people feel and how I feel is the motivation.
Man, Cameron, that's fantastic, man. Let me ask you this. You know, we talked about the Grammys, and I'm glad you threw something about this, you know, segregating a high school in there, because I'm familiar with high school students, and one of the schools I work with, or the school I work with, had a situation, a historical situation concerning segregation, desegregation, etc. Let me ask you this: when you talk about a career, and we're trying to keep young people motivated to do what they want to do, like you said, if you do what you want to do, then that's just you're living a dream. But everything won't always be Grammys. Everything won't always be success. How have you learned to deal with, you know, from what we've heard from people we've interviewed in the music business, there are obviously periods of extreme success, and then there's some periods where there aren't extreme success. How do you balance that out, man? How do you make it work and keep it going?
I think it's an everyday practice. You have to live in that truth. Right now, my thing is not to get too high and not to get too low, because there are peaks and valleys in this particular industry. You know, going and watching the process of, you know, I had quit teaching and was doing any and everything to pay my bills while I was waiting for the Sting and Shaggy situation to materialize. But I was believing, you know, so I was driving Uber and Lyft. I was performing, you know, I was recording guitars for people, writing songs and giving them away for pennies on the dollar. But I believed that it was going to happen. So then Sting happens, and all of a sudden, boom, I get this check, and boom, I get that check, and then I see my work on television, and I'm being flown in to perform with them, and this and that, you know. And it's just one of those things. You're like, man, you know, how long is this gonna, how long can this really last? Like, I'm not gonna become his roommate or anything like that. So, you know, you prepare yourself, but and then you try to think that, you know, everybody thinks that they have a big break, and that after that point it's going to be smooth sailing, and it's just that's not most people's journey. Even though it may look like that, you always have to continue to put the work in. So I think continuously working kind of keeps me level-headed as well, because I know I'm always like sowing a seed for a later harvest. I'm never just always reaping. I'm always giving, you know, and putting into something that I think will turn into something that will work out for me.
Man, fantastic. Hey, look, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions before we call it a night, but I gotta pass the baton to the man they call the researcher, Mr. Bill Spivey. What you got for Mr. Cameron?
Cameron, I did research, and I'm not going to bore you with your background because I know you know it well. But I'm going to say something to you that I picked up immediately. As Carlos said, we've interviewed a lot of people in the music business, and I have to say you are a breath of fresh air. There's only been one other person on here who has really, really impressed me, and that was Beth Manley. I don't know if you know Beth. She was at one time, she was competing on America's Got Talent. But I can see from listening to you that you're well-grounded. And when you said something about your father participating in the movement, I was not surprised, because I can tell by the way that you talk, the way that you carry yourself. The only thing I will say to you is that you seem well-grounded. I hope you stay that way, because you're in a dangerous, dangerous game in the music business. And you said something which really resonated with me. You said you don't want to get too high and too big. And that is something that's very important because, they call me the researcher. And I'm telling you, I did some research the last few days because I was really troubled when I learned of this. It's got to be the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. But Smokey Robinson is being sued by 4 women for rape, sexual abuse, assault. They came up with some bullshit I've never heard. I'm a retired FBI agent, and I've never heard of some of this false imprisonment, gender violence. I don't know what the hell gender violence is, and creating a hostile workplace. And, I think when I think about this, I go down the list of, the guy on the back wall, Michael Jackson. He got too big. He tried to buy the Beatles masters, and you see what happened to him. R. Kelly, I think he tried to buy his masters. You see what happened to him. Bill Cosby got big, and he was very big, tried to buy NBC. And I remember he came out with a statement. He said he did not realize when he tried to buy the network that no matter how much money you got, they still consider you a nigga. And he tried a second time, and you see what happened to him. So the only thing I'm going to say to you is, I'm glad for your success, and I'm very glad you're well-grounded, well-spoken, and you went to what I consider the Harvard University of the South at Morehouse, because just like Harvard, Morehouse has one hell of a network. And when you said it, one of your Morehouse brothers helped you and collaborated with you, that's what they do at Morehouse. I went to a school that's very prestigious too, Virginia Union University, and Union and Hampton are prestigious because they are one of the 2 HBCU schools that are private. But I'm glad it's what you did. And the other thing I will say to you, and I'm just commenting, that you seem like an old head, and you work with old heads. When you say you work with Freddie Jackson, it kind of surprised me when I was reading up on it, because I said, you're not that old. You're working with Freddie Jackson. And then you said that you work with Chaka Khan. Chaka Khan is now going on tour with Gladys Knight. So congratulations to you, man. As I said before, you're well-grounded. Just be careful and take care of yourself, because I don't want to read in the next 2 years that you being sued by 3 or 4 women who said that you sexually assaulted them. And people don't realize how easy it is to set someone up. And today's society has totally changed from back in the day. Back in the day, you were innocent until you were proven guilty. Today, with the advent of social media and everything, immediately when somebody comes up with a charge against you, people are going to automatically assume you're guilty.
I'm gonna jump in for CJ. He sent in some questions since he couldn't be here, and it kind of piggybacks a little bit off of what Bill was talking about toward the end. CJ wants to know, how has the rise of social media and AI affected your career?
That's a great question. I think social media, so Black culture is one of the biggest exports of the US. You realize that when you travel abroad and everyone, looks at you as the ambassador of everything that's Black culture. And you realize just how much of a hamster wheel a lot of people in our culture are on. I think social media adds to that hamster wheel because it's a siphon that's just siphoning ideas from everyone. They're giving you something virtual that you're supposed to all of a sudden value, like likes and followers, that is supposed to equal some sort of social currency. So now in exchange for that currency that you believe you're getting, you're going to give all your ideas. They say, oh, be consistent on social media. You need to be posting once to twice, 2-3 times a day. So if you're an artist and you're trying to get to 10,000 hours of mastery, how are you going to get to that on this instrument when now you have to take however long it takes to create something that's worth getting engagement from your followers to create a post that may or may not go viral. And then if it does go viral, you're now that guy who did that. So you got to hope that that thing that you did that makes you famous ties into who you really are and what you really do, because now the virality of that post makes you responsible for doing more things like that if you want to extend your 15 minutes of fame. So for social media, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I do post to stay consistent. I post more heavily when I'm promoting something, which I think, adds value. I try not to sing too much on social media, but I do sing enough. My business is in performing. So if I'm performing every week, 4 or 5 times a week on your phone, it takes away some of the demand, let's say, to come and see me in person. You could say, well, I could see him anytime. So I do feel like it's technology in general is good to be able to reach a wider audience, because now, if I have fans in Japan or something like that, I can target those fans with ads or, marketing dollars. But at the same time, I do think when it comes to um, ideas like things like intellectual property, I do think social media is dangerous for that, because you got the guy in Mississippi who doesn't have any resources. All he has is his phone and an Instagram account, and he just comes up with original songs every day to try to get viral. And then somebody who has money or has resources can just sit in the research department, you know what I mean? That the A&R department that spans social media for different trends and things like that, and you find something, you could say, oh, you know what, this idea would sound great with this artist who's got the budget, who's well established. So I do feel like it's a tool, but it's also been used to marginalize artists as well. They'll say it used to be you need 10,000 followers in order to be considered for this or that type of opportunity, and now it's just something else. So I feel like social media is another way that the industry and entertainment can move the goalpost back a little bit on deserving artists who are very talented, who may not have the resources behind them. But I mean, again, that's the point. The talent is the value. You're bringing the value as talent to the table, and the company is supposed to be providing an equivalent value, which is resources, finances, by which the two come together, and you have this great career. But I'm still figuring out some niches of mine. I've done some series myself. I did a series called 5 Seconds of French for about 3 years, where I taught little tidbits of French. I did, one season. The first season was during COVID, so it was on a green screen with a Parisian backdrop. Then the second season, I flew to Paris and shot 50 episodes in Paris. And the third season, I shot in Montreal. So I have I've had a relationship with social media. It's good for discovery, definitely, but I think you have to have something to keep them there, to keep them interested and make them real fans.
Okay, before I throw it back to Carlos, I want to follow up on your question. It's kind of a two-parter, not necessarily connected, but what advice would you give to a young musician who's just starting out, given all that you just talked about? And then I'm going to segue and have you talk about Genius Aretha, and then we'll throw it back to Carlos.
I would say, choose your influences wisely, and be open to a multitude of influences. I think for me, I had the fortune of having a bunch of different uncles and aunts that listened to different types of music. So if I was in the back seat with my uncle, who was my football coach, I was going to hear Babyface, Tony. I was going to hear some Norman Brown, some Christian McBride. That's what I got from him. If I was with my aunt, It was going to be Prince. It was going to be DeBarge, you know, all them guys. Is with my other uncle, I was going to be listening to some, you know, 90s rap. You know what I mean? So that plus going to school and you know, you hear what other people are listening to, you want to be cool, you stay involved. So I think part of it happens naturally, the influence, but when you decide to hone in on what it is that you want to develop out of yourself, choose those influences that you see similarities with, you know. Me growing up listening to Terrence Trent D'Arby and Prince, you know, those artists informed me in a certain vocal way, but then Babyface informed me from a songwriting way, you know. He also is the reason why I play the acoustic guitar. Babyface, When Can I See You Again is the song that made me want to play the acoustic specifically. So when you choose those influences, dive into them, spend some time with them, you know, don't rush the process of becoming an artist. You know, I see a lot of people who come out too fast, and you know, they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, but they weren't necessarily properly prepared to get into, you know, the thick of things. I think it's good in order to see kind of how, you know, you have to work in order to develop that skill of performing, but at the same time, you know, um don't let going out into the world and seeing what your talent is going to get you as far as responses prevent you from still working when it's time to come home. You know, applause makes people work less for some reason. They feel like I made it, you know, but I think that, you know, you owe it to yourself to always be a good student over whatever gift it is that you were given, you know.
Okay. Genius Aretha, and then I'm gonna throw it back to Carlos and Bill so we can wrap up. Genius Aretha, talk to us.
Uh, During COVID, I'm like in the middle of figuring some things out, like we all were, and I get this call. Actually, it was right before COVID that I got the call. February of 2020. Got a call, random call, about um, you know, being interested in auditioning for a role. I'm like, yeah, sure, you know. Sent some pictures in, you know, they got a feel for me, and boom, got this opportunity to play Cornell Dupree, longtime guitarist for Aretha Franklin, and many others. So I go in, and you know, it was a great opportunity because Cynthia Erivo is an amazing actress. It was shot here in Atlanta. You know, at the time I was, you know, hodgepodging um, my income, so it was a different opportunity for me to be artistic, and still involved in music at the same time. So go in and you know, it started as a 3-day opportunity, a 3-day job. And it ended up turning into, you know, about 2 weeks of just being on set, you know, being on set with Courtney B. Vance and being on set with Cynthia Erivo, and watching how they worked. T.I. was involved, you know, in that production as well, and being on camera and in sets with him, and just kind of seeing how things really operate was a tremendous experience, but also being able to use my talents as a guitar player, to help enhance the story, and having a speaking role and everything like that. It was a bunch of things all rolled into one. I met a bunch of musicians that I didn't already know, that I ended up working with after that. But it was a great experience because it helped me survive the pandemic, you know, single-handedly. I would not have made it without that and without social media, because I started live streaming very early on. I would live stream once a week and play for people, play covers for about an hour, and accept tips virtually. So it was like I was kind of doing like the, you know, the bar thing, you know, you play in the bar thing, but I was just doing it at home. And that plus Genius Aretha just gave me an opportunity to see what it's like, you know, being an artist. You know, they say it's feast or famine, you know, and sometimes it's more famine than it is feast, you know what I mean? But it feels good to hunt, you know, as I say, like, you know, to go out here and get these kills, you know, and to say, hey man, I got this gig, it's gonna pay me this, and then I got this gig, and you start getting calls. Like that type of adrenaline rush from being involved in the artistic community is amazing. So pivoting from music to acting and back, you know, was a great way for me to say, you know what, this is something else that I want to seriously pursue as well in any way possible. So I loved it.
Okay, thanks. Carlos, we're gonna wrap it up. We go back to you and go back to Mr. Spivey.
All right. Well, you know what? I heard Kameron say a lot about him being a teacher, a French teacher, and then making references to students. And you know, Mr. Spivey was a public school teacher as well. That's right. Before he was at a super FBI agent. So it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So for you guys and all the teachers out there, I want to say a special shout out to all the teachers. Remember, we can't do anything in this world unless we're taught by somebody at some point. So to all the teachers, big ups.
Right.
I want to also say, hey, Kameron, man, you got a song on one of my favorite shows, BMF, and it was with the La scene. Come on, man, talk to me about that, man. You know, I want to hear about La La. I want to hear about was he in the back actually on scene, or did they just use the music? Give me some scoop, man, on what's happening with BMF and the Meech crew. What's up?
So another very interesting situation, you know, BMF, you know, it takes place during a certain time frame. So from the music supervising standpoint, they wanted to make sure that they had music that complemented the times. And just from a business standpoint, it made sense to get original material as opposed to trying to license a whole bunch of other material from previous artists. It just costs more. So I ended up being able to get a call about participating in creating some original music for the show. So, you know, that we got given not a concept, but just got given a time frame to just imagine ourselves in, and to, you know, do a 2.0, a reimagination of what if I was an artist at the time period, and in the time period, and I had my, you know, my high top fade and, you know, my big chain or what have you, my big Cuban link. What would a song sound like coming from me? And I just was working with a producer, a longtime collaborator of mine, and he sent me the music, and I just imagined that environment, really. Like, okay, what would if it was a scene and there was a kickback going on, what could I hear? You know, if it was a barbecue, if it was a, you know, a spades tournament that they were playing, or if it was, you know, anything. And You With Me just came out really easily. You know, I think when I write songs about the positive elements of a relationship, or, you know, trying to get someone's attention or something like that, they always pretty much go well. And I had no idea that it was going to take off the way that it was. We weren't told where it was actually going to be used. But you know, song comes out, the show airs, and it wasn't originally going to be released at all for public consumption. But the demand was so high because they used it in this scene where Lala is walking through the gym, and she's walking past another one of the main characters, and she basically takes the air out of the room when she walks in. So, you know, you never know whether the song is going to be used for 15 seconds or whether it's going to be used while people are talking over it. You don't know. Fortunately enough for me, you know, literally she walks in the room and everything, all the sound stops, and the song is the only thing that's playing while she is walking through, looking so amazing. So it ended up making the song explode. I mean, I think we've got around 18,000 Shazams to date on the song itself, but we ended up releasing it, and it's done really well, and it's one of the songs that I include in my repertoire now.
Hey, congratulations! Thank you for being on the show. And man, I had a ball tonight, man. We're gonna be checking you out, and then next time she walks through the room on another season of BMF, I'm gonna be like, "Come on, man, you gotta play a Kameron song. Come on, come on." All right, man, Mr. Spivey, what you got? Bring us home. What you got?
Cameron, I'm going to talk about a couple more people that you remind me of. You know, Lionel Richie is one of them. You know, probably you may remember one of your uncles played, but Curtis Mayfield, Smokey Robinson, and then you talk about Babyface. All those guys were performers, but they were also great songwriters. Which one is your most passion, writing or performing?
You know, I used to say performing, and maybe half of the time I would say performing, but I'm leaning towards songwriting now because the song I have currently is called I Will, and I took an opportunity to take a situation that was impacting me negatively, you know, which was discovering, you know, that someone I was giving my full attention to and full time to had been given attention and time elsewhere. And in the midst of that situation, I intentionally grabbed my guitar begrudgingly and started to try and sort it out in a way musically that would help me in some way. It would release, you know, some of the ideas, it would release some of the tension. And that is the result I have is the song that is on the radio that is number 29. So uh, that experience when I write and when I completely allow myself to be a vessel, it's almost like it's like a light is beaming down into me. And it's the ultimate experience of connecting with the true source. And I just literally am writing, and it's fun, you know what I mean? And I by myself, but I'm like getting like, oh, that line is so good. You know, that type of feeling as a songwriter is really, really special for me. So I would say songwriting right now, just because of the way that it allows me to reconnect to that real love of creating something from scratch. You know, the creator, you know, created everything around us. So when I create, that's how I feel closest, you know, to, you know, that higher power. So I would say songwriting.
You know, you really you're too young, but you must be possessed by one of the OGs. Because when you listen, I mean, back in the day, if you listen to Curtis Mayfield talk, if you listen to Smokey, they wrote songs off of experiences and they became big, big hits. And I remember listening to Babyface in an interview, and you know, he wrote all of the songs for Waiting to Exhale. And he talked about, he looked at read the script, and he wrote songs off of the script. So I'm gonna call you an OG, a young OG.
I love it.
You know what, Cameron, you're going to get the last word, and you're going to get the last word in a different kind of way. I'm going to toss out a quote that I know you're familiar with, and you can close us out with this just by giving us some context. Authenticity doesn't exist without vulnerability.
Mm. So that quote came from realizing that our job as musicians and creatives is to take an experience and to encapsulate it in some way so well that that experience can be given to someone else and they can own it and process it the way that they want to. You can't do that without being completely at the mercy of whatever it is that you're pulling from. Like having a filter on it in the creative process only dilutes it from the beginning. And so the vulnerability factor in it is with this song, I am open completely. I'm open about uh partially maybe having something to do with it. You get what I mean? Maybe I'm the one to blame. I say that. So, you know, but the vulnerability of it is, uh, and I will use some of the lyrics from the song because it really is the way that I felt, and it was really exactly accurate. In the pre-chorus, I say, I don't want to feel the pain of knowing I can't or seeing I ain't the only one holding you. Maybe I'm the one to blame. Either way, it's a shame. I'm going to have a hard time trying to forget your name, but I will. So I am letting you know, listen, it's going to hurt me. It's going to hurt me to have to leave you alone. I don't want to, but I will. I will for me. I will for the vision that I have. I will for whatever reason it is. But that vulnerability of being able to say, you know what, you got me. You got me. I thought I was out here, had my guard, up or what have you, and you slipped in, and, this is the feeling that comes along. It's a coin toss, and when you're playing the love game, you sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and when you lose, it's important to be able to process it and move forward with it, not to sit there and just be incapacitated. That's not the type of life that I can afford to have. I got too many things to do. So it's like, you know what? I feel bad, it stings, but I'm still going to push forward. So that's the vulnerability piece for me, being able to own all of the emotions and being able to be confident in all of them, because I'm human, and that's what humans do. They feel, they process, and as artists, it's our job to be able to capture that emotion and so that it could be, heard or played or what have you.
Man, you just gave us a new anthem. 40 plus years ago, Gloria Gaynor had I Will Survive. The brothers got an anthem. The brothers got an anthem now. I will.
I'm telling you.
I will. We got our anthem now, man.
Yes.
Shoot.
Yep.
I couldn't think of a better way to close this bad boy out. We got an anthem. I will. A whole bunch of people gonna be saying, no, baby, I will. Don't worry about it. No, go on about your bad. So, no, I will. Thank you, Cameron. Hey, look, this is gonna be up, man. I appreciate you. And for the Thought Brothers, I tell you, man, this has been a great interview. Glad
Really
you were
is.
here.
Yep.
I'm Gary Johnson for the Thought Brothers, and until next time,
Good night.
we are out of here.
Good night, folks.
I don't wanna feel the pain, yeah. But when I can't, yeah. Seeing I ain't the only one. I'm not the only one, baby. I'm the one to blame. Anyway, it's a shame. I'm gonna have a hard time trying to forget your name. I will. I will, I forget.